Greetings and welcome back to Stock Explorers.
Hello, everyone.
Today we're doing a deep dive into Viking Therapeutics. That's VKTX.
Yep. Focusing on the weight loss and metabolic disorder space they're in, it's pretty dynamic right now.
Extremely dynamic. And some recent news has definitely, well, stirred the pot, you could say.
That's right. We want to unpack what's happening, especially with Eli Lilly's recent announcement and what it means for Viking.
Exactly. We'll look at how that news might impact VKTX, their overall picture, the stock, financials, and, of course, the risks involved.
It's crucial context for anyone looking at this company.
Okay, let's jump right in. The big headline. Eli Lilly's oral weight loss drug, orforglipron.
Right. The trial data came out showing significant weight loss in type 2 diabetes patients, up to 16 pounds over 40 weeks, I believe.
And what really caught my eye was the safety profile. Looked pretty favorable, didn't it?
It did, especially when you remember Pfizer had to halt their oral GLP-1 candidate because of, well, potential liver safety concerns.
That context is key. So Lilly comes out with this news. What was the immediate market reaction, specifically for Viking?
Well, it was interesting. Viking, VKTX, saw some pressure right away. The stock dipped.
Expected, maybe.
Perhaps. But then it actually recovered a bit, closed up, what was it, about 1.4%? Around $23.94.
So not a complete panic sell-off, more nuanced.
Exactly. Suggests investors are maybe waiting, watching. It's complex.
And it wasn't just Viking reacting, right? We saw different moves across the board.
That's right. Novo Nordisk, another giant, their stock actually slumped a little.
But Structure Therapeutics, they developed an oral GLP-1 too. They surged.
They did surge. It just goes to show how sensitive this whole oral obesity drug space is right now.
So Lilly's news really solidified their position, you'd say.
Oh, absolutely. The orforglipron data strengthens their hands significantly in this race for an effective oral treatment.
The data showed about 8% weight loss at the top dose in those diabetic patients. But the key thing seemed to be the lack of plateau.
Yes, that's a very important detail. The fact the weight loss curve didn't flatten out.
What does that suggest?
It suggests that in people without diabetes, who often respond even better to these GLP-1 type drugs, orforglipron might lead to even greater weight loss.
Making it potentially more attractive for the broader obesity market.
Precisely. It strengthens Lilly's overall case.
And then there's the timeline. Analysts are saying Lilly could be, 3 years ahead?
That's the estimate floating around, yes. Roughly a 3-year lead in the oral GLP-1 space compared to competitors like Viking.
Wow, 3 years is. That's a significant head start in pharma.
It really is. It gives them time to potentially establish market presence, build the brand, maybe sort out insurance coverage, all before others even get there.
Which puts immense pressure back on Viking, right?
Definitely.
So let's talk implications for VKTX. Their main candidate is VK2735, dual GLP-1 GIP agonist like Zepbound. And they have both injectable and oral versions in development.
Correct. And Lilly's orforglipron news, well, it undeniably makes the competitive landscape tougher.
How so specifically? Does it just raise the bar?
It absolutely raises the bar. Lilly's efficacy data combined with that good safety profile, that's the new benchmark,
For all oral GLP-1s.
For all oral GLP-1s. And arguably, it even puts pressure on dual agonists like Viking's VK2735, whether it's the pill or the shot.
So investors will be looking for Viking's data to be, as good, better.
I think the expectation now is that Viking needs to meet or ideally exceed what Lilly showed to really justify a strong valuation going forward. Right. The pressure's on.
We also touched on market reach. Oral drugs potentially being better for, say, middle and lower income countries.
That's a very practical consideration. Injectables can have challenges with cold storage, distribution, logistics.
Needles, administration.
Right. An oral pill like orforglipron or potentially Viking's oral VK2735 could be much easier to handle and distribute in many parts of the world.
So even with Lilly's lead, there could still be a significant market for Viking's oral version.
Absolutely, if they can show it's comparable or maybe even better on efficacy, safety, convenience, the whole package.
What about the acquisition angle? Viking has often been talked about as a potential buyout target. Does Lilly's progress change that calculus?
It might. It could reduce the immediate urgency for a big pharma company to snap up Viking just for their oral GLP-1 tech.
Unless Viking's data really blows people away.
Exactly. If upcoming trials show VK2735 has a clear, significant advantage, maybe much better weight loss or superior tolerability, then the acquisition story heats up again.
But for now, maybe less pressure on potential acquirers focused only on the oral side.
Potentially, yes. But remember, Viking isn't just VK2735, they have other assets.
Good point. Let's circle back to the stock reaction. That dip, then the modest recovery. What's the takeaway sentiment?
I'd say it suggests cautious optimism, or maybe just holding tight. Investors see the increased competition from Lilly, no doubt.
But they haven't written Viking off.
Not at all. There's still hope, anticipation perhaps, that Viking's own data for both the oral and injectable VK2735 will be strong enough to carve out a major place in the market.
So everyone's waiting for more data from Viking.
That seems to be the prevailing mood. Data is king here.
Okay, let's zoom out a bit. Viking Therapeutics itself. For listeners maybe less familiar, give us the quick overview.
Sure. Viking is a clinical stage biopharma. They focus on metabolic and endocrine disorders. Think obesity and also NASH, that's non-alcoholic steatohepatitis, a liver condition.
And the lead candidate, as we said, is VK2735, dual GLP-1 GIP, injectable and oral forms.
That's their star player right now, the one getting the most attention.
And there's been some buzz around it, hasn't there? Analysts suggesting it could be potentially even better than Lilly's own Zepbound.
Yes, that kind of commentary has been out there. It's based mainly on the early stage weight loss data.
What was so compelling?
The amount of weight loss seen fairly early on, I think at the 3-month mark in some studies, was quite impressive, and there's speculation it could increase further with longer treatment.
Any other potential advantages analysts are pointing to?
Well, there's been some talk about potentially a better tolerability or maybe more convenient dosing compared to existing drugs, but
Big but.
Big but. That all needs to be proven in larger, later stage phase 2 and phase 3 trials. Early data is promising, but it's not definitive proof yet.
Understood. So VK2735 is the lead. What else is in their pipeline that's worth noting?
They do have other interesting programs. VK2009 is one that's an oral drug for NASH and fatty liver disease. It's in phase I trials.
That's just a big area with no approved drugs yet, right?
Exactly. A huge unmet need. So success there would be very significant for Viking.
Anything else?
They also have VK5211, that's for recovery after hip fracture, currently phase 2. VK06112 for type 2 diabetes, ready for phase IIB. And VK0213 for a rare genetic disorder called X-linked adrenoleukodystrophy.
So not just a one-trick pony with VK2735.
No, there's depth to the pipeline, which adds potential value beyond the main obesity focus.
Let's shift to financials. Crucial for a clinical stage company. How's their cash situation?
Actually, quite strong. As of the end of last year, December 2024, they reported having over $900 million in cash and equivalents.
Over $900 million. That's a solid runway.
It is, especially considering their recent quarterly operating expenses were somewhere around $45 million. It suggests they have enough cash for several years of operations at the current burn rate.
So no immediate need to raise more money, which can dilute existing shareholders.
Right. It provides stability while they push through these expensive clinical trials.
And they recently made that big manufacturing deal with Pharma, $150 million.
Yes, that was a significant move. It's about securing manufacturing capacity for VK2735 if it gets approved.
Planning ahead for success.
Exactly. Trying to avoid the supply chain headaches some other GLP-1 makers faced when demand suddenly took off.
The market reacted a bit negatively at first.
It's a slight dip, yeah. But most analysts saw it as a smart, necessary step, preparing for potential large-scale production, whether they launch it themselves or get acquired.
But it's important to stress they're still pre-revenue, right? Operating at a loss.
Oh, absolutely. They reported a net loss of around $86 million recently. That's standard for a clinical stage biotech pouring money into R&D.
Investors in this space understand that losses are part of the journey towards potential future profits.
Correct. The focus is all on the pipeline's potential.
Okay, let's talk the stock itself, VKTX. We mentioned the recent price, low to mid $20. It's been volatile.
Very volatile. Common for biotech, especially in a hot area like obesity. News can swing the price wildly. It's below its 52-week high, but well above the low.
And the short interest is quite high. What does that tell us?
It tells us there's a significant number of investors betting against the stock, expecting the price to fall. That's bearish sentiment.
But it also creates a risk for the shorters.
Yes, the risk of a short squeeze. If good news hits, those short sellers have to rush to buy back shares to limit their losses, and that buying pressure can rocket the stock price upwards quickly.
So high short interest equals high risk, high potential volatility in both directions.
Precisely. Now, beyond the stock mechanics, what are the core business risks for Viking?
Right, the fundamental challenges.
Well, number one is always clinical development risk. Drug development is tough. Many promising candidates fail in trials. Either they don't work well enough or safety problems emerge.
The failure rate is high in biotech.
Extremely high. Then there are financial risks. Yes, they have cash now, but development is expensive. Future financing might be needed down the road.
Regulatory risk.
Yeah.
Getting FDA approval isn't guaranteed.
Never guaranteed. Timelines can shift, goalposts can move. It's uncertain until the approval letter arrives.
And competition, obviously. We've talked a lot about Lilly, Novo.
Huge competition. They're up against giants with way more resources. That's a massive challenge.
And finally, broader market risks.
Yeah, things like potential market saturation eventually, pricing pressure from payers, changes in healthcare policy. All those external factors can impact success even if the drug works and gets approved.
So putting it all together, the Lilly news, the pipeline, the financials, the risks, what are the key strategic things Viking needs to nail now?
Differentiation, that's number one. VK2735 has to stand out.
How? Better weight loss? Fewer side effects? Easier dosing?
Any or all of the above. They need a clear, compelling reason for doctors and patients to choose it over Lilly's or Forglipron or other competitors.
And the upcoming data readouts are critical.
Absolutely pivotal, especially data in the non-diabetic obesity population. That's where they really need to shine.
And keep executing on manufacturing, like that Pharma deal.
Yes, proving they can scale up production reliably is essential. They need to be ready if the data is good and approval comes.
Okay, let's try and wrap this up. Key takeaways regarding Lilly's impact on Viking.
Lilly's or Forglipron data definitely ramps up the competition, no question. It sets a high bar.
But the door isn't closed for Viking.
Not necessarily. The market seems to be saying, show us the data. If Viking's VK2735 results are strong, showing clear advantages, they can still carve out a significant niche. It all hinges on that upcoming clinical evidence.
So for potential investors looking at VKTX,
It's a classic, high-risk, potentially high-reward biotech play in a massive market. The growth potential is there, but so are the challenges.
competition, clinical hurdles, regulatory unknowns.
All of that. Investors need to weigh the potential against those very real risks we discussed and keep a close eye on the data as it comes out.
Due diligence is paramount. And
Oh.
stay informed.
Absolutely.
And for those tracking closely, the next earnings report for Viking is scheduled for April 23rd, 2025. That should provide some updates.
Yes, that will be the next official update on financials and program progress.
Excellent. Well, that brings us to the end of this deep dive. Thanks for sharing your insights.
My pleasure. Always interesting to follow this space.
And thanks to all our listeners for tuning in to Stock Explorers. If you found this useful, please do subscribe, like this deep dive, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next one.